So for the next hour or 45 minutes, 50 minutes or so, we get to kind of delve into some of the results that Tom Krugman and Allison were talking about this morning in terms of berry health in both raspberries and blueberries, and get an idea of what's going on in the state of the art in that, and it is meant to inject some hope for those of you that are in the berry business. And I think you'll find it to be very useful. Brit Burton-Freeman is the science advisor for the National Raspberry Council. She has been with berry health research since, 20 years now, plus. I think since we started berry health symposiums, you've always been there. So thank you, Brit. Brit was educated at Cal State and UC Davis and has a PhD from UC Davis. Is now the director of the Center for Nutrition Research at the Institute for Food Safety and Health at the Illinois Institute of Technology. That's quite a title. That's pretty long. Illinois Institute of Technology. And Britt's going to speak to us on the human health benefits of berries. So it's yours for the next 45 minutes, Britt. Thank you. Welcome. You can take that, either one. Flip it on.
Okay. Oh,
let's welcome her.
Okay. All right. Is it on? Is it on? We're good? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Henry, for that introduction. And it's a pleasure to be here. And thank you for attending this session. Hopefully, we're going to have some fun. I walk around a little bit, so hence the handheld. But I've saved some time at the end for some question answer if you want, or we can run out of here and go straight to lunch, whatever you pleasure. It's always a difficult presentation when everybody's stomach starts grumbling about, lunchtime. So anyway, I'm going to talk about small fruits, specifically raspberries and blueberries, and the health benefits of their color, but also the other constituents. And so when you think about, all right, so what all is she going to cover? Oh my gosh, scientists get up there and they give lots of graphs and charts and slides with small print that you can't read. Well, I'm going to do that. I'm definitely going to do that. But hopefully I'm going to walk you through it. It's always fun to show some data. We love to talk about data. But I'm going to start out with the business side of this and talk a little bit about consumers. And then we'll talk about some of the berry chemistry. You might be very familiar with it, maybe not. And then we'll get into some of the biochemistry. And so what I'll start off just talking about is the fact that, berries are chemistry, food is chemistry, your body is chemistry, and so it's really the interaction of chemistry. So while you think that, oh my God, we're going to talk about chemistry today, it's actually going to make a lot of sense, I hope. But ask questions if not. So starting with the business side, when I give presentations, sometimes I like to think about what is the big challenge? What's the challenge for the health professional? What's the challenge maybe for the farmer, the grower, producer, the person that's selling berries? So let's start out with, what is the nutrition or public health challenge when it relates to this business? Well, for me, it's getting people to eat more fruits and vegetables, but specifically berries. I would love to see people eat more raspberries and blueberries. So that's my challenge. And if I pose the question to you, so the grower, the packer, the buyer, the seller, what would you say the business challenge is? Anybody? Well, I'm guessing that it's getting people to eat more berries, right? So we actually have a common goal. And so if we can just get people to eat more berries, I think we'll both be happy. Agreed? Yeah, absolutely, right? All right, so how do we do that? Well, it's a little bit more than just the offering these days. We have to find ways to motivate purchase. We have to find ways to motivate consumption. So you'd be happy if they purchase them. I want them to actually consume them as well, okay? And there's good reason for that. And I'm going to share some of that data with you today. One of the great things is that berries, raspberries and blueberries are healthy. And you think, well, why do we got to motivate them? Why do we got to do research to show them that they're healthy? Well, you actually do. People nowadays want to know more about the health promoting components of foods. Okay, so even when you think you have a healthy item, which you do, You got to give that information, and you got to find a good way to deliver that. And the good thing is that health is a driver these days. Not so much in the past, but it's certainly increasing. So if you can see this chart, I'm just going to show you a couple charts of where does healthfulness rank when people are purchasing foods and beverages. And so taste is at the top still. Okay, people want food to taste good, and that's great because raspberries and blueberries taste fantastic. All right, so that's the blue line across the top. The green line is price. People are still concerned about price when they're making choices. But the yellow line is that healthfulness line. And you can see that it's increased from 58% to 71% since 2006. And if you get a little bit closer here, if you look on the far side, I don't know if I can, I don't have a, if you look at the 2014, look at that right there. Price and healthfulness are almost together. So if you can actually show how much better the health piece is, you will also have an opportunity to get a better price, or at least have people say, you know what, the cost-benefit ratio, the benefits there, I'm going to pay the extra price. Okay, and that's a pretty big, hurdle for people to get over in some cases. There's other data that's showing that people are thinking a lot about healthfulness. 9 out of 10 people are thinking about it, and half of those people think about the healthfulness of products a lot. So we can certainly look more to the healthfulness of these products and really try to capitalize on that. And then when you ask people what are they thinking about and making efforts to buy more of, fruits and vegetables is at the top. So you can see that you don't need to see all the other ones, but vegetables, fruits and vegetables are at the top. So the question is, how do you differentiate so that we can attract consumers to purchase and consume more berries? Well, it's understanding consumers today and what their demands are. They want to know more about their food, and they want to know more about it. They're asking about what food to eat, what benefits they deliver, and how they do what they claim. And that's where research comes in. So I'm a researcher, so I'm a little biased, but research is right there to deliver on consumer demands, deliver on regulatory demands. So as an industry, there might come a time where you take all that great research and you say, you know what, we're going to put this in a package. Maybe we're going to make a health claim, or maybe we're going to submit it for some policy changes relative to what people should be eating in America. And that's a whole nother topic I'd be happy to talk about. But there's a lot of opportunity for where research can go. For the consumer, industry, regulators, it's used for decision making. And then if you're in communications, trying to build awareness of your product, marketing, that serves as a platform. In fact, it makes it really easy to talk about some of the great things about berries. So what are some of the top concerns? Because this is actually, as we segue from, healthfulness of products, where does it meet with people's concerns? Cardiovascular disease is still a big deal. People are thinking about it today, and they're thinking about it in their future, okay, in their future of their family members. Diabetes is a big one, and Alzheimer's disease. So these are the top 3, along with obesity. That's another big one. But what I want to point out, because I think this is a really important concept for people to think about, is that you go to the doctor, and the doctor tells you, he or she does not know if you're going to have a heart attack. In fact, their job is to try to help you not have a heart attack or to not have Alzheimer's. But they'll be looking for signs. They'll be looking for cues. And we call these risk factors. And so when your blood pressure goes up, your doctor will say, you know what, we really need to do something to keep your blood pressure down. I really don't want to put you on medication. But if we have to, we will, because that's a risk factor for cardiovascular disease. Or if your blood glucose starts to rise, starts to stay at high levels for too long, your doctor will say, we got to make some changes so that it comes back down in control, so we don't have to go on medication. And essentially what you're trying to do is keep your body in this nice balanced status for as long as possible, right? Healthy aging. So there's all these risk factors that contribute to both cardiovascular disease and Alzheimer's. And we think about Alzheimer's as the brain, right? Cardiovascular as the rest of your body. And it turns out that many of these things impact both the brain and the vascular system. So if you eat for your brain, you're going to be eating for your heart and your vessels. And if you eat for your vessels and your heart, you're going to be eating for your brain. So that's the good news. So some of the things that we'll look at when we get into the health benefits of raspberries and blueberries is how some of the effects that it might have in the periphery might also have benefits for our central nervous system, so our brain. Now, one of the things that I'm going to point out now, we can kind of keep this in the back of our head, is that does everybody know what insulin is? Insulin and glucose usually go hand to hand. Okay, perfect. Okay. So insulin's that hormone that interacts with our cells, open the gate so glucose can get in, we can metabolize it for energy, right? If insulin's not working well at our cells, glucose stays in the blood too long, it can attach to proteins, make things not work so good, so that's not a good deal. That's part of the problem with high glucose. But insulin also has a lot of other metabolic effects, and it has effects in the brain. And so one of the things that we're learning from our research is that when our body is resistant to insulin, we have a whole bunch of other things that go wrong. Okay, so this is actually, for my lab, one of the areas that we target is really understanding how well does insulin work in the body, and where might raspberries and other berries have an impact on making it work better. Okay, because as you can see from my graphic here, insulin resistance precipitates all these other risk factors that then get to that final endpoint that we try to stay away from, the actual diseases. So what is it about plant foods? There's a number of plant components. This area has been growing immensely. Everybody's got their favorite plant and their favorite bioactive, okay? So maybe you know about tomatoes and lycopene. A lot of people love the various things that lycopene can do. Tomatoes are full of other wonderful compounds, but lycopene's kind of what people know it for. How about resveratrol? What's the association? Wine, right? Wine and grapes. So what are berries known for? Well, they're known for these red and purple and blue compounds that are called anthocyanins. The anthocyanins give them those colors. They're pigment compounds. And when we think about the mechanism, how these different compounds can work, we can drill down and start investigating them one by one or collectively. So let's talk about anthocyanins. This is just a color chart just to give you a sense of the chemistry of what makes your fruit colorful. And it runs from kind of this reddish orange all the way through to the dark bluish purple. And at the bottom, you'll see the anthocyanin structure. It's pretty basic. And then you'll see a little table, and it has some H's, hydrogen, OH groups. With just a simple tweak in the chemistry of that base compound, so where you see the rings ABC, you can change the color, and you can change its activity for the plant and its activity in your body and how your body interacts with it. I mean, it's pretty amazing, just simple tweaks in the chemistry. So one of the things that we look at as a researcher is how do these different compounds, and there's 6 of them that we consume, and I'll show you which ones are in berries, but 6 of them are found in the diet, and some places we can get them more readily, and berries is one of them. So dietary sources, these are the obvious ones. When we look across various berries, so as I mentioned, there's 6 anthocyanins. They go by the names of pelargonidin, cyanidin, peonidin. There's not going to be a test. You don't have to recognize these. But just notice that from cranberries, the blackberries, the raspberries in the center, strawberries, and blueberries, there's different compositions. And this is just the simple lineup of those anthocyanins, okay? Obviously, you can see just by looking at the slide that blueberries has the most, okay? They have 5 of the 6 anthocyanins. Okay, so they happen to be a pretty dense source of these anthocyanins. Strawberries and raspberries both have cyanidin and pelargonidin, but in different ratios and with different and very unique characteristics of other molecules that are attached to them that change the way that they will be recognized and metabolized in the body. So they may do very different things. Okay, so when you eat a lot of berries or a variety of berries, you're getting all these compounds. If you eat just one, then you'll get what they have to offer. But the idea is to have a mixture of all of them. So let's talk about the uniqueness of raspberries and blueberries. Okay. On the left, we have the raspberry. So that's, we've already talked a little bit about the anthocyanins, but they also contain a variety of other nutrients and phytochemicals. So phyto means plant, chemical is a plant chemical. It's all how these chemicals interact. Very unique to raspberries are these elagitannins that break down into simpler molecules called ellagic acid. Raspberries also have a tremendous amount of fiber compared to other berries and to other fruits. And we're going to talk about more about that. So raspberries have a very unique combination of these anthocyanins, the elagitannins, and fiber. Blueberries, on the other hand, have chlorogenic acid. They have all those anthocyanins, but then they have chlorogenic acid. Chlorogenic acid is a very simple molecule. You can see up there. And it breaks down into two. The ellagic acid breaks down into a one, so it gets a little bit smaller. But one of the things that we're going to find as we go through this is that when we metabolize them, it shoots off an array of different compounds that can work in our body. So it gets a little complicated, but nonetheless, we want to understand this chemistry so that we can understand how the chemistry interacts in our body and can make a difference one cell at a time, because our body is a bunch of cells with a lot of chemistry that we want to interact with and keep them all nice and healthy. So the upshot is that there's a lot of health promoting constituents in raspberries and blueberries. We have the essential nutrients. Raspberries brings fiber to the party, but we also have all these other phytochemicals that have a lot of benefits. So now the time comes where we got to study these things, okay? And I put this slide in there. We'll spend a little bit of time on it just because I usually have people ask me, how the heck do you study food? You just eat it and watch and see what happens? Kinda, okay? But we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But then when you say, okay, anthocyanins, pigment compounds, they have biological activity. How do you know that? Okay? So what do we do? So pretty simply put, kind of a busy slide, but on the left-hand side of the slide, you'll see that these are the different forms in which we can test foods and their constituents. So we can take the whole food. We like to work with whole foods, mainly because that's what people eat. People eat food. We might test it in its raw form. We might test it in a processed form, or we might test it in a formulation. Because every time we do something to a food, it can change some of that chemistry. If we heat it, we formulate it in a certain way that might block some of the activity. Okay, most of the times your digestive system does a great job in pulling things apart. So we usually don't trap things or keep things, but there are technologies out there that would do that. So what is the food and how is it consumed? We do that testing and we prepare it. We prepare it in our labs. We might also be interested in specific extracts. Okay, so maybe we want to know, what do those colorful compounds do in our body? And so we can extract those out. There's a lot of sophisticated extraction methods and instrumentation nowadays that we can extract and we can feed people. And we can feed people as is, or we can maybe put it into a formulation. Okay, the dietary supplement business does this all the time. Or if we want to get down to the nitty-gritty and isolate compounds, we can do that too. Okay? So then once we have what we want to test, then we can decide where do we want to test it. We can test it in cell culture. So at the right-hand side of the slide, you remember the Petri dishes from high school and college, right? You're in your biology class and put some cells down on this agarose medium, and then you feed them, they grow, and then you do whatever you're going to do to them, right? Okay, so kind of the same idea, but now we can start applying different stresses to the cells, see how they act, and then maybe we'll add the stress plus a berry extract. Or better yet, we could put the stress, see what happens to the cell, and add metabolites from that berry extract, just like your body would produce. And nowadays, we can light up pathways. So when you get into the biochemistry, you can look in your microscope and you can see changes in biochemical pathways. You can measure when a gene is turned on and it makes a certain protein, or when it's turned off. So we can test all that kind of stuff. It's actually quite a bit of fun. And more so than ever, we can actually visualize it. We can image this stuff, okay? And then you quantify it and you say, okay, with this particular extract, with this particular food, this is going up or this is going down. We also have animal models. We do a lot with rodents. We're not rodents, but they act as pretty good models. And I'm going to be sharing a lot with you because what you'll see in the science is that we usually start out maybe with animals or cells and get an idea if something's going to be active, and then we go to humans. At the end of the day, though, you want to know, I want to know, consumers want to know what berries will do for them, right? You want to know what it does for me. Not me, but you, right? And the other thing that's happening, and this is kind of a baby boomerish thing, okay? So if you're in the baby boomers, you're probably thinking, oh gosh, what's she going to say? One of the things that, actually it's a great generation to push things along, is that I want to know exactly where it's going to work, because I'm going to use this for that and this for that, right? Okay? So we want to know exactly where these things are working and when they work. Okay. And the only way to do that is to do it in humans and to study the right populations. So teenagers are going to react to things differently than middle age and older age. Okay. But one of the things that we're finding is that things start to modify, I'll call it modify, a little bit younger than we want them to. So we need to intervene a little bit sooner. Okay. So we really actually need to get people going sooner than later. But human studies are the gold standard. We have to have those human studies. All right, so let's talk about some of the science. That's what you guys are all here for. Ready for the charts? Okay, you got some chicken wire up there. Those are our chemistry. We know a little bit about the chemistry. I've already told you a little bit about that. The next question is, do these things get in our blood? So when we consume them, do they get digested and absorbed intact? Do they get metabolized? And if they get metabolized, where they get metabolized? Let me just ask, does anybody think much about their colon? Okay, everybody's going, I am not raising my hand to that, right? Okay, you got to think about your colon, all right? It's one of those things that, okay, the large intestine, a lot of dirty stuff happens, all right? So, but we have a great, what we call microbiome. You might have heard the term microflora, okay? And you probably even heard that we live with more microbes, okay? There are more microbes in our body than there are human cells, okay? We actually work together. It's called symbiosis, okay? So we want to make sure that we feed those guys really good stuff, all right? That's where some of the fiber stuff comes in. Nobody likes to talk about fiber. Fiber, oh God, we're going to talk about that old stuff again, right? But fiber is important, and we're finding that the ecology or the community of our microbes in our lower bowel or our colon is really important to overall health of the rest of our body. So we're not going to talk too much about that today, but just, you know it here, and you can bring this up at your next family event. Tell them what you learned about your colon, okay? But the things that we can produce there are amazing bioactives that come from some of our berries. And some of the raspberry research that's actually already published has some of that data, and I'll show it to you. So we look at graphs like this and say, all right, so when does it get in the blood? What particular things get in the blood? How long do they stay there? If I eat more, do I get more in my blood? Okay, and that's basically what graphs like this look like. But at the end of the day, am I going to get a health benefit out of it? What is going to be that health benefit? Is my blood pressure going to be in more control? My blood glucose going to be in more control? Is my brain going to function better? I have to say that every year I get older, I keep thinking about my brain and how well is it going to keep functioning. Anybody else? Okay. The other thing that I think about is how well I'm going to move. Mobility. Mobility and aging also is a big one. Okay. But don't forget about your vessels. We tend to forget about those a little bit. They need to stay nice and healthy as well. So there's different endpoints that we can look at. So what is the evidence? What health benefits have been documented about blueberries and raspberries, and how do they do what they say? Well, if we look at the bulk of the research, okay, antioxidant properties, there's not a person in this room, I'm guessing, that has not heard of the term antioxidant. Antioxidant? Yes, right? ARI was founded on antioxidants. In fact, it's what kickstarted it. Okay, in the late 90s, learning about what are antioxidants. In fact, going further back, some of the compounds that you find in berries that have antioxidant properties, people thought that those were anti-nutritionals. But it was only after we realized how they interact with our body and they help keep us in this balance. Okay, they help work with the body because the body has a system to do that as well. But when they work together, it actually helps everything from a chemistry standpoint in your body work better, okay? So that's what kind of kickstarted the field. If you want to go into the literature, you'll find a lot about antioxidant properties of raspberries and blueberries. But then the next big thing was cognitive function. Blueberries and cognitive function, same sentence, right? Isn't that what people think about? And that's actually, that's a pretty big deal. When you make connections like that, Okay, because people make the comment, oh, I haven't had my blueberries this week. I can't remember what I was thinking or whatever, right? Okay, but there's some really great data. And the more that we can learn about how these berries can promote a healthy brain, memory function, mobility, okay, the better off we're going to be when we age, okay, because we're going to consume those, and we're also going to use that great data to tell others to consume more. But what else is happening with blueberries? So blueberries now is taking off in a number of different areas. Blood pressure is one of them. I'll show you some of their data. I wouldn't be surprised if the blueberry industry did something from a regulatory standpoint with that. But they're also looking at some other things like diabetes. How about raspberries? Raspberries are just coming online compared to blueberries, and I'll kind of show you this pictorially in a little bit. Not as much research in the space, but it's growing and it's developing. So the National Processed Raspberry Council has a really robust research program to start getting this data out there. Okay, there's a lot of publications already about raspberries talking about some of the anti-cancer effects, some of the metabolic health effects, some potential in glucose control and insulin. So this is a real focus area, particularly when you consider the combination of those anthocyanins, remember I showed you, and those lagitannins and the fiber combination. So there'll be a lot of research that maybe in a year or two, I'll come back and I'll tell you, look at what's going on in raspberries. So a lot of potential opportunity there. The other big one is to look at the interaction of these antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects and how they can impact multiple systems in the body. Okay, so a lot of good stuff here. Let's start with blueberries. Okay, I can only do one fruit at a time. So let's go blueberries first, then we'll follow up with raspberries. What's going on? How many have seen the data on some of the research on blueberries? Anybody? So a few of you, okay, so if you've seen it, then you can take a nap right now. Come back in a couple slides. But for those of you that have not, I thought it might be kind of fun for you to see kind of where it started out. And Jim Joseph, now passed on, started out in blueberries and looking at some of the memory and mobility tasks in rats, okay? His partner, who runs the lab now and is the leader in this field, Barbara Shuckett-Hale, has continued to do this work as well as expand into humans. And so she's taken some of that science that's happened in rodents and now taking it to humans and doing that testing. But one of the early studies that they did utilized a platform. It's a pool. So what you see here is it's called the Morse water maze, and it's a pool of water. It's actually pretty big. It's like a children's pool. And they put a platform in there, and they put it in a room, and the room has various visual points, okay, so that the rat can actually kind of determine where it is spatially in the room. But essentially, there's a platform. They plunk them down so you can see the green dot. So the green dot is where they start them. They'll start them there on 2 different occasions. The first trial is to get them acquainted with what they're going to do, all right? And they basically have to find the platform, and there'll be a goodie there, okay? How long does it take the rodent to swim there? And they actually swim pretty good, okay? Then 3 or 4 days later, they'll put the rodent back in the pool, the exact same spot, and see how well they find that platform. And the learning memory piece of this is that if they have a good memory, they'll get there very quickly. And if not so much, they won't get there so quickly. And so what you're seeing here is a young rat start to the red dot, the finish, and it doesn't take the young rat too long to get there, okay? And this is just a tracing of where they swam. And this slide comes from Barbara. She lent it to me. Here's an old rat, okay? So the old rat swims a long time. Can you see that? I don't know how well the lighting is. But the old rat is all over the place, okay, trying to find that platform, okay? So a pretty big difference. So their experiments were to determine whether if rats over a period of time, anywhere from 4 to 12 weeks, consuming a blueberry diet could improve their time to get to the platform, all right? And so here's trial 1 in the solid bar, trial 2 in the hash bar. These were the animals that were old, and they are equivalent to about 70 years old. And on the first trial, it took them about 36 seconds, and a few less than that on the second trial, so about 34, 32 seconds, okay? But those rodents that were on the blueberry diet, that was the difference in their time. So they actually, the older rats found the platform faster on the second time when they were on the blueberry diet. So, they did a lot of different other exercises with them. I'm just showing you one. But essentially, over and over, they were getting these results that their memories were just better when they were on the blueberry diets, okay? And then not too long ago, Robert Krikorian, he's at University of Cincinnati. He is a clinical psychologist. He works with people with Alzheimer's. He said, you know what, I'm going to take some blueberry juice and just see what this is all about. And so with some older individuals that had mild cognitive impairment, over 12 weeks, he fed them or had them drink this blueberry juice. And then he tested them on a couple different recall lists. And these are actually pretty hard. I've actually done them myself. And essentially looked to see, would there be an improvement in their recall on a verbal memory task? And so what it is, and I can't really administer this quite as well, kind of need a list, but essentially someone sits there and recites 20 words to 20 unassociated words, or it could be 15, but 15 to 20 unassociated words. And then the participant has to recall as many of those back to you, okay? And you think, oh, that's easy. Oh, it's not. It's, you might recite 8 back, okay? And then they'll give you another chance. And the next time you might recite 10 back. And then they'll give you another chance. And the next time you might get 11, all right? But it gets really hard to get up there, all right? And then they'll do some interference, and then they'll come back and have you recall one more time, and then your numbers slip, okay? So essentially what they found after 12 weeks with people that already had some cognitive deficits when they had the blueberry juice, they got an increase in their verbal word list recall, which is pretty great. They also saw some increase in impaired association. So these were words that were put together. People would have to recall those. And then in another chart that I'm not showing you, they saw a reduction in interference. So the attentive span of these individuals was also improved. So some pretty fun stuff. So this work is continuing to grow. In fact, the same gentleman is doing some work in another study with people with age-related cognitive function, so a little bit different diagnosis. And then Barbara, who is doing the rodent work, is actually doing some mobility testing in humans. And so she'll be coming out with some data. She's actually, we haven't gotten to the raspberry part, but she'll also be doing some preliminary work to see how raspberries might impact mobility. She has some early data that says that it might have a big impact. All right, so some other stuff on blueberries. That was the early days stuff. What's happening right now? Blood pressure. Yes.
So one of the things I'm interested in is what the dosage is on both the raw fruit and for humans and the blueberry juice, because there could be some variances that, how much juice did they give these people for the 6-week trial?
Yeah, they had a 12-ounce juice.
It's a lot.
Yeah, so it was a lot. And and I'm going to show you, especially when we get to the blood pressure stuff, who was doing how much. I got actually some visuals, but the juice was just really a juice, a cup of 100% juice.
Yeah, 100% juice. And what about have you talked about didn't you talk about raw fruit or something? Well, so a question, and you may not have gotten to it, is sort of what is the threshold of an average serving of blueberries that's needed to,
I'm going to get to some of that.
Events.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. No, that's great. So so the other thing that's happened, and let me just talk about, so the blood pressure, you guys know, is one of the risk factors, right? And it's a pretty big market. One of the things that I think is a really great question, and it's actually come up more now, because once you start getting positive results, you start asking the question, as the woman in the back asked, well, how much do I got to drink? And how often do I have to drink it? Or how much do I have to eat? And can I really do that? And do I have to do it every day? So these are pertinent questions today, okay? But it takes some research to see some effects before we can start answering some of those questions. So one of the first blood pressure studies that was done with blueberries, you can see at the bottom, was the equivalent of 2 cups of blueberries a day, but it was given in a powder form, okay? So that's kind of a lot, right? But they saw some nice effects. They saw some decreases in people that had elevated blood pressure. Actually, this is the 8-week study. 8 weeks, they see a drop in systolic blood pressure and a drop in diastolic blood pressure, okay? So that's what you're seeing in the blue bars and the nice little star there. Then there was a study that followed on to that, because once you get a hit, so to speak, you want to see, okay, is that repeatable? Okay, so here's one of those where I put up the chart or the table from the paper, and you can't really see the numbers, right? But essentially, postmenopausal women, 8-week trial, but this time they used 1 cup equivalent of the blueberries a day, and they saw a decrease in systolic blood pressure by about 7 millimeters of mercury, so about a 5% decrease. And they also saw a drop in diastolic blood pressure. There's been 2 other studies that have also shown reductions in blood pressure, and a third one that did not show reductions, but it was in a 3-week trial, and people were they were smokers. Okay, so there might be that, okay, so maybe you need more blueberries, okay, in a smoking population, or maybe it just won't work because the stress in that particular individual is far too great. Maybe you need at least 8 weeks to see an effect. This study, I've kind of hidden it here. If you look at it, they had a 4-week evaluation and an 8-week evaluation. At 4 weeks, they weren't seeing their effects yet. So these are all things that are really important to the research. How much do I have to consume, and how long till I see that effect? And if I stop consuming, will I lose that benefit? Because that's a pretty important point as well. One of the things that you might think about is that the earlier we can intervene with a dietary option and get people in control, or at least back close to normal, the longer we can push off medication. And sometimes, you know, that's a big deal for people. It'd be a big deal for me. The longer you can stay off medication, the better. So you think about the pharmacoeconomics of it, right? So keeping people off, keeping them off those side effects. And then if you finally do have to go on medication, you've kind of done everything that you can. And usually you still stay on those diets. All right, so how do blueberries and other berries impact blood pressure? One of the areas that is being investigated, this is also an area that raspberries will be investigating, is how do we, is the health of the endothelium, okay? And this is your blood vessel. You may or may not know this, but blood pressure is regulated by this tiny cell layer in your blood vessels, and it's called, or they're called endothelial cells, and collectively the endothelium. They're important for blood flow, blood pressure regulation, wound healing. They have a variety of different jobs, okay? They're also involved in keeping those vessels healthy so that they relax and contract, or that's part of their blood pressure regulation, but also keeping the underneath nice and healthy so we don't start developing plaque, so we don't start pulling in to our vessels cells that would have cholesterol associated with them, or the inflammatory cells, so the immune system. And nitric oxide is a big part of that. And so in a study that you want to look at how healthy the endothelium is, you can use an ultrasound. This just gives you an example. And then you plot out a nice chart that looks like this. And basically what you see on the bottom line in an acute study over 6 hours, that if individuals have the blueberry juice versus a control juice, you get a nice relaxation response when they had blueberries within, it's actually about 2 hours, so an hour being the peak, whereas nothing happens if they're just having water, okay? And the bottom line to this is you want your vessels to be nice and flexible, okay? You want them to relax and contract. And the more they can open up and contract, the healthier they are. And so one of the things that we think this is one of the mechanisms that where blueberries is having their effect, and we'll be asking some questions very similar to that with the same group out of Germany relative to raspberries. All right, so what about raspberries? I said we'd talk about blueberries. I kind of gave you a quick preview there. The maturity of the science is different, and I already told you that, right? There's a lot more out there on blueberries than there is on raspberries, but the health benefits research is getting started. It's off and running. There's some great data already coming in for some of the researchers. And I think there's been 2 RFPs out, and there's probably going to be a third. So there's a lot of stuff that is to be discovered, okay? But some of the early work that's already out there suggests that there's a big potential here for cardiovascular and diabetes risk reduction. So keeping people away from those diseases. A lot around metabolic health. So what have we learned so far? Let me just take a moment and talk about the fiber. I think that from a communication standpoint, this is just a great opportunity because we know this, and there's a ton of fiber research. And when we put fiber together with all the components in raspberries, it's just going to be, I think, a great whopping message. But let's talk about fiber. People think about fiber. It's not the same fiber that's in cereal, but it's a good way to show a comparison, okay? If we look at 100 calories of a high fiber cereal, you get about 6 grams of dietary fiber. If you take the same 100 calories from a bowl of raspberries, you're going to get 12.5 grams of dietary fiber. That's pretty big, okay? When you consider that people in the United States and other parts of the world just do not meet their the fiber recommendation for optimal health, okay? In fact, it's about 12.5, okay? That's what they're eating. If they just had 100 calories of raspberries, they would hit that, okay? Seems pretty simple, right? If you do a comparison with some of the other fruits, it becomes very obvious. So red raspberries are at the top. The first column is on a 100-gram portion. The second column is on a 100-calorie option. These are the grams that you would get. And it's 3 to 4 times all the other fruits that are out there, okay? Even for many vegetables as well, okay? It's pretty remarkable. It's a nice contribution when we think about there is a fiber gap in the United States and globally, and here's an opportunity to help fill that fiber gap, okay? And they'll get a bunch of other goodies as well. And then, of course, we got to think about where the opportunities are for that. Well, we talked already a little bit about the colon, so gut health is one area for sure. Heart and metabolic health, potentially satiety and appetite control, and body weight regulation. So there's a lot of good stuff to come here. We've talked about the chemistry, getting in the blood. I think I promised you a few charts on this, right? What does it look like? And what are the associated health endpoints? So this is one of the human studies done with raspberries. This is a group led by Alan Crozier, formerly in Scotland. Now he's at UC Davis, but he's done a phenomenal job characterizing raspberries as well as what your body does with them and how they get in the blood and when they get in the blood and what compounds are in the blood. And essentially what you can see from all these charts, we won't go through all the chemistry, but if you look starting at the top left, some will be in the blood within a couple hours. Some will peak in the blood at about 6 hours. And others won't peak in the blood as you go to the far right until 24 hours. So when we consume raspberries, we get these metabolites that have biological activity in all through a 24-hour period. In fact, some of these might continue to circulate. And so when we start looking at the health benefits, we can say, all right, what could some of these compounds in the first 2 hours be preventing or helping me keep in balance? Or what's happening in 6 hours? If I think about the first 2 hours, I think about glucose metabolism. If I think about 3 to 6 hours, I'm thinking about lipid metabolism, all my cholesterols and all those things. And if I'm thinking about 24 hours, maybe there's just a general protection. So there's lots to come after now knowing what's in the blood and when it's there. So I didn't show you this slide earlier. It's kind of complicated, but the bottom line is that there's some good data looking at red raspberries relative to oxidative stress. This is one kind of fun chart where we look at the oxidation of lipids like cholesterol and various fats. And we kind of think about this in our cupboard when fat goes rancid, it's been oxidized. What we don't want is for lipids in our body to get oxidized. And so one of the things that we can ask the question is there a protective factor? And so this was a study that was done that basically shows that when you add iron, okay, to a test tube with lipid in it, it'll oxidize it, and it'll oxidize it quite readily. But how can you protect that? And the little blue dots at the top are for blueberries, and the red, even further up, show that level of protection. And that's great. It's a test tube. The implications, you guys all know what cholesterol runs in your body, the LDL, the bad stuff, right? Okay, it's bad when it's high level, and it's even worse and more harmful for our vessels when it's oxidized. So one of the areas that these antioxidant properties in protecting lipids from oxidation can protect some of those lipids that run around in our body. We can keep them from being oxidized and settling in our vessels. Some of the anti-inflammatory effects of raspberries has come out of some of the rodent studies with, it's an arthritis model, so how can we reduce some of the arthritis that occurs in these models? And when fed red raspberries, you'll see a decrease across the board, including with damage in some of the joints. So this is kind of fun, and it begs the question, would there be some benefit in humans if we went to a model of osteoarthritis? Okay. I mean, these are things that impact all of us probably in this room. At least it does me. Some work in rodents on raspberries and blood pressure. There's some decreases there. Does this rodent study say that time to jump into blood pressure? I don't know. Maybe to do those FMD, so those ultrasound studies looking at the relaxation responses is the first next step. And so there'll be a study in raspberries looking at the relaxation of vessels to see if that's a potential opportunity. And then finally, for glycemic control and metabolic health, there's some work that's out there. And again, much of this early work for raspberries is in cell culture, and it is in the rodent models. There's a little bit coming out in the humans. I showed you some, but this is an area that you're going to see a lot more. And basically, the upshot of this work is showing that raspberries may have an impact on insulin sensitivity. Oh my gosh, aren't we tired? Are you guys going, no more charts, right? Okay, so let's make this simple. Basically, this study says there's a lot of good stuff happening, okay? And this is again in a rat model. Let's take it to humans. So more to come for sure. There's a lot of key beneficial effects coming for raspberries. It's a developing literature. It's a developing area of science. I think it's going to be really exciting, and I think it will team up well with blueberries and some other berries. I think you'll see some commonality across the berry group, but then I think you'll also see some very defining components that each of the different berries will deliver. But at the bottom line here is that if we can make a metabolic impact, we're likely to hit impact on the brain health, as well as vascular health. So I think that just to sum it up, I think there's an opportunity with every meal. We can eat less of this and a heck of a lot more of that. And if you can hang on for 1 minute, one more minute, we'll take a little journey through the grocery store. You guys got 1 more minute? All right, so let's see if I can do this, and let's hope it goes. So here we are in the grocery store. This is the blueprint for successful aging. And I did a talk with Jim Joseph years ago, obviously before he passed. And he had this slide, and we talked about it, and we thought, oh, there's so many fun things that we could do with this slide. So I added a few little punches to it. So let's just see what it takes to go through the grocery store. So here we are. This is you, all of us, right? And we're going to go through the fresh fruits and veggies aisle, and we're going to pick up some fresh raspberries and blueberries for sure, right? Now that we've seen all the wonderful things that they do for us. We'll go hit some nuts, because we have to have a variety of foods, right, to make this all happen. So there we go, pick up our nuts. Now we're going to go down the chips and cookies aisle. No, right? Stop there. Hit up meat and fish. Head down the pasta and baked goods aisle. Got to be careful there. Need to read very closely our nutrition facts, right? All right, let's head to canned veggies and soda. Yeah, forget about that soda business. Keep moving, get some canned veggies, head towards dairy. Now, if I do this in the evening, everybody's about, oh yeah, let's do that cheese and wine, right? You cannot have cheese without wine. So pick up some fine cheeses. Head to the whole grains aisle, because we don't even know what that white bread stuff is. And now we're going to head to the fresh fruits and veggies aisle. I mean, not fresh, frozen. And there's our frozen berries. So I think that we have the recipe for a good, healthy life, right? All right. Thank you so much. And I'm happy to take any questions. Yes. Yes.
Isn't any fruit that ends in IES all in pretty much the same category? Cherries, berries, blackberries, everything that ends in IES.
Well, I'm not sure yes, they are a category of foods. Is that what you mean, like the berry category?
But are they, in a lot of ways, quite, I mean, I'm shooting myself in the foot because I'm a raspberry grower.
Right.
But,
No, they're different. That's what, I mean, so that's one of the things that I was trying to show. There are some similarities, but there are also some differences. So yes, there are a berry category, and some of those similarities you'll see across the berries, and they might have very similar health benefits, but then some very specifically can add value in their own special way because of the chemistry of your fruit. And raspberries have some great unique combinations. Mm-hmm.
So in this day and age, social media, Dr. Oz, Food Babe, drive food buying decisions with horrible, unscientific backed information. How do you, and yet they're really, really, really influential, and people don't seem to want to listen to good science. How do you process and deal with that?
Well, I mean, it's a great question, and the scientific community battles it all the time. We have some great other options, marketing options. So Allison from Salt and Company do their darndest to get past all that bad media that's really, perpetuating some stories that are out there for a long time, or start up new ones. I mean, it's really crazy. It's a challenge. I mean, you do the best you can, and you try to let good science trump.
Do your studies show any difference in the nutritional value between raw berries and frozen berries?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Well, right now, so generally there's very little nutritional difference, okay? And probably from a viewpoint of your body, negligible in its ability to detect those differences, okay? Right now, as it turns out, the Raspberry Council is doing that very work, and they're basically taking the frozen red raspberry and having all the analytics done on that, so that when you go to some of these databases, it's not just the fresh numbers, it's actually the frozen numbers. But in general, freezing is a great opportunity or processing step to preserve nutrients.
How strong is the relaxation data?
The vessel relaxation?
Yeah.
It's actually pretty decent. There's more studies coming out with it. It's a reliable test. If that's what you're asking. Yeah. There's not a whole lot of groups that can do it, but those that can do it and do it well are finding the same responses.
I was just thinking, excuse me, but there's more men in the room than there are women. But maybe you can make a little red pill after the blue pill.
Oh boy. I mean, how can you top that question? Now, let's see,